And Tuesday is here. Hello, good afternoon and welcome to The Pulse. We are coming to you live from our studios in Kokomlemle on your digital terrestrial TV because we are free to air on DSTV channel 421, GoTV channel 144. Thanks for choosing us. We are JoyNews, independent, fearless and credible journalism. Coming up this afternoon on The Pulse, hundreds of Ghanaians caught up in the Russian aggression in Ukraine, refusing to return home despite government overtures to help them return home. Well, government says it may be forced to leave them to their fate. We'll bring you an exclusive interview with the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister on The Pulse. Also coming up, the e-levy debacle. Law Professor Raymond Atuguba says it has now become a necessary evil and wants Ghanaians to support it no matter how bad they find it.
And a return to the stranglehold of the IFIs. We have no choice but to pass it.
And this afternoon we asked that big question: what is going on in our society? More than 500,000 Ghanaians were found to have ended their love affairs and another 400,000 are separated. That's according to the Population and Housing Census. So we are asking that question. Now, it's all coming up right here on The Pulse. We have analysis here for you. I am Blessed Suga. The Pulse is brought to you by Global Communities Dignilu, affordable, safe sanitation. Don't forget that this afternoon we are streaming live on YouTube and all of our social media handles at JoyNews on TV, Twitter and us with the hashtag The Pulse. My personal handle is at Blessed Suga. Stay with us for the latest. Well, this afternoon we are learning that some Ghanaians living in war-torn Ukraine are refusing to return home in spite of arrangements initiated by the government of Ghana to evacuate citizens back home. A couple of days ago, the Foreign Affairs Ministry commenced a land evacuation for over 1,000 nationals who are moving into neighboring countries such as Poland and Hungary as part of the first step of moving many into safety. And what you see on your screens now hours ago were the first batch of 17 students evacuated from Ukraine have touched down in Ghana with the hope that many more will follow in the coming days. But government is giving indications that some Ghanaians are refusing to return home. I caught up with the Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs, Kweku Amprechum Sapong, earlier today to get an update on the ongoing evacuation.
I think it's a very good forum that we have created, in that it will be possible for us to interact with them, to tell them exactly what is happening. We've also been able to hear from them what they think of the whole situation and what has been troubling them, the anxious moments, the anxieties. It's also been good that we've had a representative of NUX Ukraine here to tell us some of the actual happenings on the ground. And the fact that the opportunity has now been open for the ministry to engage with NUX Ukraine itself to get a first-hand information as to what is happening there. And I'm sure where there are differences, we should be able to iron them out. And the forum that we are extending into a platform, into a WhatsApp platform with the parents, so that it becomes possible again for us to engage them on a daily and a regular basis, give them information and also to tell us what their kids are telling them. And I think what we have done today is going to actually lessen the tension and a bit of a confused situation that were in the minds of some parents.
The concern of parents is that many of their wards were studying, their academic activities obviously will be disrupted. Are there plans for these people?
Well, as the minister said, the few people will say, right? We met today not to go into that side of the whole emerging issue, but really to focus on the evacuation side. In the situation that we have in Ukraine, you don't start thinking of what is going to happen to the education of my child. First thing is the safety. That is why we started by saying, safety first, get into a shelter so that at least you are safe from whatever is going, the war situation. Then the next move is how we'll be able to move you away from that war situation into a safe area. And from that safe area or safe country, that will be able to take you away from there and bring you home if you so wish. So now that was the focus, and that is what we think we need to deal with. And as the minister said, and with the forum that we are setting up with the parents, we'll move into the second phase, maybe which will be, okay, your education is being truncated or is being challenged now. What can the ministry or government do to help these students to continue with their education? That will be another forum that we will deal with.
Are there plans?
Yeah, there are plans. Now, when we are getting to that, we need to bring in other stakeholders. Ministry of Education, right? Ghana, the tertiary, that's right, yes. And then there's the issue of scholars getting, because some of them, even though however small it is, 27 students are on government scholarships. Now the war has brought them home. Scholars getting, what can be done? We don't know where the war is going to end, whether it's going to be possible for them to return to college work or university in the next foreseeable future. We don't know. Some of them, maybe the trauma that they have gone through, the psychological effects on them. Is this something that they will want to go back to Ukraine with memories of what happened when they were there? So you need to look at all this. Like the minister said earlier on, I've been in touch with the president of the Ghana Psychological Society, and they have decided that as and when we need them, they will also be prepared to move in, engage with the parents and engage with the students who have come home. So definitely, we do have plans, yes.
Even the evacuation itself, so far 17. Some say the number is appalling. Is it the case that government is having some challenges with the evacuation process in terms of finance or other factors?
It's a bit unfortunate that we have such descriptions that is appalling. It is those who've made themselves available. You have to go through a certain process. First, you've been moved from the war zone into a safe country. That is point one. Now, there are certain processes that you have to go through. We had to engage some of the airlines. Qatar, yes, we managed to get them, they were ready. At the time they were ready, there were 16 students who had been processed. So you can only deal with the one that is ready. Some of them are not. The minister mentioned that we have been issuing travel certificates to a whole lot of them. You can't travel without a form of a travel certificate. So now we've issued about 150 travel certificates. We are processing. Some of them we hear stories, they've come and they've not been able to cross from the border into the neighboring countries. So it's work in progress. We are sure by tomorrow another batch will come, the day after another batch will come. And also don't forget, when it happened, you will not be able to move in with full force. It takes time. First, we need to identify which countries that they are likely to go. When was it? Was it Saturday when we got to know that they were moving to one of the countries? I had to call our mission, get men ready, get money ready, and move them the next day. Others, because right from the word go, they were not moving to all the neighboring countries. There were certain selected countries that they were going, and number one was Poland. Poland, we don't have a mission there. But our mission in Vatican, Holy See, looks after Polish affairs. So I got in touch with the ambassador about 9 o'clock at night and said to him that make sure you get 2 persons to get to Poland the next day. And then Poland didn't have money ready. Sorry, Vatican didn't have money readily. I got in touch with Rome mission, provide funds for Vatican.
So it is not the case that government doesn't have money to carry out the event?
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm just giving you a classic example. Vatican has responsibility for Poland. We don't have a resident ambassador there or mission. So people moving to Poland, we need to get our Vatican mission to send officers there to go to attend to them. At the time I was issuing the instructions, it was on a Saturday. And Vatican said they don't have the money to be able to move those people on the Sunday. I had to scan around, so I called Rome. Rome, can you readily find some money and give to Vatican so that they can send some people down to Poland? Rome quickly on the Sunday managed to scout around and got some money and gave to Vatican to send the 2 officers. Then the Monday they were able to go to the bank to raise enough funds and then send some officers there. So that is the kind of situation that we are in. So even where we don't have the money readily there, we are able to do some magic.
One of the challenge for government has been students and some persons who are refusing to come home. What reports are you receiving?
We are receiving those. Not all students who have crossed into the other countries or neighboring countries want to come readily now. As I walk in here today, a parent called me aside and said to him that, Minister, my son has crossed into, is it Hungary or Poland? And he tells him Warsaw. He says he's in Warsaw. He wants to spend a couple of days there before coming down. I say, hey, you are in this kind of situation, you run out of this traumatic situation, you are in a safe place, we are trying to get you home, you say we should leave you to spend some few days there. And that's again, Reverend Dr. Tete was saying, there are others who think that Hungary is a EU country, right? So once they've gotten into a EU country, maybe it will be possible for them, because normally when you are traveling between EU countries, you get to the border, nobody bothers to ask you of your passport or anything of that sort. So you are likely to have some of the students who think they can take advantage of the situation. We've all been students before, we've all been kids before, and we know some of the things, some of the ideas that we have. And we have it on record. Not everybody wants to come. Well, at least we send the minister has sent the message through their parents, and then also through the nooks when we engage them, that it is not advisable to say that you are not coming. It is not. You need to home, sweet home. Your home is your castle. You don't need to start another adventure. You have come from a traumatic situation, a war zone, into a safe place. The safest place is to be at home. And then if after being at home you decide to formulate or have some ideas, that's a different thing altogether.
Some say it could be because of the economic situation.
Oh, my brother, that should never be a case. Well, I agree with you. Me as a young man, the moment I finished university, I traveled out of my country. I was out there for some 25 plus years. Right, so I can understand them. Every young man you want adventure, every young man you want to see green pastures. I won't fault them, but in this kind of situation that you find yourself, and especially when it's happening, the EU countries are also very much alert, because they know that people will try, and especially their focus will be on people of African descent, that they are the ones who are likely to try to take advantage of the situation and get into their various countries. So they've got their antennas up, and their security is also out there watching and snooping and seeing what is going to happen. I will sincerely appeal to them that, having gone through what they've been through, best thing is not to continue into uncharted waters, but best come home, home sweet home. You will never know the next opportunity that will come your way.
Sweet home. That's the message from the Foreign Affairs Ministry. But indications we got there was that a lot more Ghanaians do not want to return home. But one man who was mentioned in that interview is here, Reverend Dr. Lawrence Tete, economist, international evangelist, and he is also with the World Miracle Outreach. Such a pleasure to see you in studios here. Sir, thank you for joining us on The Pulse. So you were just coming from the engagement between parents, yes, government and other stakeholders as part of moves to deepen engagement and education on the evacuation process that the Foreign Affairs Ministry is carrying out. But are you surprised at the latest development that is coming, that the fact that in spite of the efforts being made by the government of Ghana, a lot more of our compatriots who are out there do not want to return home?
I think it is normal.
It's normal.
Yes, you have to be informed about your environment and your situation to know how to take a wise decision. And as I said, some of us have had sleepless nights, even though I'm not on the ground in Eastern Europe now because of my affiliation. I studied in Budapest University of Economic Sciences in the 80s. And of course, I was a student leader. What most of them are doing now was what we did during the Cold War era, when the walls were broken in Berlin, were some of the students who marched to Berlin to go and show solidarity when we had to bring Karl Marx status down in Hungary, Budapest University.
So you were part of all of these historic moments.
Yes.
How does it feel now watching the situation that students, a similar one that they're going through now?
That is why I've been very passionate about it.
Right.
That is why I've taken time. In fact, for the past few days, you'll be surprised, I've lost my voice. I've had sleepless nights because parents who know me connected to the, and of course, there's no gainsaying that. Everybody knows I'm referred to as a black Hungarian. When the president came recently, I've even just been given one of the highest awards from Hungary by the president of Hungary.
Wonderful.
So most people know that one. The situation is a very dicey one. And as I said this morning at the conference center, parents need to advise their children to be wise. There are a lot of young men and women who are listening to other voices and are creating imaginary situation for themselves that doesn't exist. Ukraine is not a Schengen country. And what I mean by that is that the visa you get to Ukraine is only for Ukraine.
Right.
Hungary is a Schengen country. So Hungarian visa will take you to the whole of Europe.
Right.
Czech Republic is a Schengen country. Most of those neighboring are the NATO countries. But Ukraine is not. And so people studying in Ukraine are a little bit limited.
Right.
And most of the students, when they cross the border into maybe Czech Republic or Hungary, they assume they've got into safe haven, so they can take advantage. That is ignorance. Why am I saying it's ignorance? Hungary, for instance, is a police state. I studied there and I can tell you. Even if you go and hide in a toilet or in a bathroom or in the kitchen, in 72 hours, they will know where you are. So if our students don't take advantage of the evacuation process now, that is being done by government and by courtesy of benevolent men and women, philanthropists who are helping, and that lapse or that time passes, you'll be on your own and you'll be very stranded. You don't want to be evacuated by government. It destroys your record. It can even take you a very long time to get a visa to re-enter again. Plus, most parents who don't understand, I've had a lot of texts and emails now of parents asking if their children can spend some time in Hungary and to see if they can develop it. It's nothing like that. Hungary.
So a lot of parents are not informed on what's happening. But to be fair to the student, as part of the main reasons for which someone would want to travel out, one of them would be for economic opportunities. And coming home unexpectedly may be a challenge. I've been interacting with one of the parents at the Accra International Conference Center today. And the indication we're getting is that here's someone who's finished medical school. The hope was that at least he was going to work in Ukraine. There's no money back home. So it could be for financial reasons, reasons why some don't really want to come back home. Could that not be part of the difficulties that we're facing
I think
now?
that is where most people miss it.
Okay.
And I understand where you're coming from. Now, what is the wisdom in finishing medical school, final year medical school, and becoming a cleaner in Hungary, in Poland, in Czech Republic and Slovakia, as against coming back to Ghana to become a medical doctor with repute and respect? Most often than not, those who stay long in certain parts of the world without proper gainful employment, they end up doing minute job and even lose track of their vocation. I'm a preacher today, but I've not lost sight of international relations. I've not lost sight of economics. That is what I did in the university because I've always been engaged in that. I'm seated here today not because I'm a pastor. It's because I'm an international relations expert and because I'm an economist and because I studied and understand the trend, the history behind the war, which I'll be telling you very soon, the dynamic behind this whole Ukraine-Russian tension. And so I would advise them strongly that don't put yourself in a very precarious situation where you'll be stuck. And on the one hand, you are not in Ghana, you are not in Hungary, and you are living in no man's land because you cannot be living in hiding. Unfortunately for us, as we speak now, it is biting cold in Eastern Europe. It's very cold in Ukraine, it's very, very cold in Russia, it's very cold in Holland and around that neighborhood, the Balkan states. So it's our rather advice that even if you want to eventually go back, It's not he that willeth, nor he that runneth. It's God that showeth mercy. God can still bring you back. And you see, my pastoral one has
come into play.
Yes,
right. So it's time for mercy. The government of Ghana is at least helping in that regard. Genuinely, there are some challenges with the evacuation process. What's your assessment of the approach the government of Ghana is adopting in all of this?
I must commend the Minister for Foreign Affairs. I watched her today. I was very sad for her. She was being bombarded with all kinds of questions. And then my good friend, the Deputy Foreign Affairs Minister, they've done very well. I think Ghana, under the circumstances, is doing its best. We need to be very mindful not to use situations like this to score political points. We have to be mindful that this is a situation that can happen to anybody. Are
you getting the sense that politics is creeping into this?
Oh, whether we like it or not, I think the trend in Ghana here is that everything become NDC MPP. And so I want the ministers and the stakeholders and opposition that they should place this seat from politics. We should not allow politics to destroy us in situations like this. This is the time we need all hands on deck. We need a massive united front to solve the problem. I was listening to Nuke speak today.
Right.
I realized there's some level of power in play. We don't need to score political points at all. I was even making an analogy that there are certain people now in that part of the world we needed. There's a gentleman called Dr. Abed Kicher, who is an honorary consul for Ukraine. He studied in the East. He's lecturing there. He's a forensic scientist. He shouldn't live there. His wife, who is also a doctor of architecture, also lived there with him. He speaks the language fluently. Unfortunately for us now, the students who are studying in the East now are not privileged like we were. Now, why do I say privilege? When we studied there in the Eastern Europe, we go first to the language school. And after one academic year in the language school, you get into the university. So for some reason, you can communicate in the language. Right. Most of the students we have these days don't go to any language school at all. They study in English language.
Right.
So they are very limited. And that is one of the biggest beam of the problems.
So then it means that language, for instance, could be a barrier in this whole evacuation process.
Big time. The reason why most of the children don't seem, and I said something today, I hope Nuke will understand the platform on which I was coming from, that you'll be surprised there are people who will find themselves into student leadership who don't speak the language themselves, so they are limited. I'm staying here, I'm here in Ghana now,
right,
and I'm translating for Hungarians in Hungary. I'm interpreting for Hungarians at the border.
Right.
People are calling me at a very odd time. In fact, today between the hour of 2 a.m. and 5 a.m., I was constantly on my phone trying to explain things to certain people at the border. Right. And this is because some of the students who are supposed to be there don't speak the language at all. They don't speak the Ukrainian language. They don't speak the Hungarian language. This is something so that we need to be checking our children about in this day and age, that our children are not as daring to study like we did. Certain things we strive to know when we're doing O-level. You want to know ministers, you want to know current affairs. Some of our children don't know. And you'll be surprised, most students who are even struggling and going through painstaking time today at the borders don't even know the cost for this war.
Right.
And so they get to Poland, they get to Hungary, they get to Budapest, they get to Czech Republic.
And they don't really know.
They don't know. They get too excited about it.
We'll get into the dynamics of the conflict that's happening, because you have an understanding. In fact, you're an international relations person, so you have a good understanding of what's happening. But Sumi has been mentioned a number of times during the engagement today. It appears that some Ghanaians are locked up within the area. The airspace is shut, and train services are not also available. That's a dangerous situation.
That's a geographical issue.
Right.
Sumy is very close to Russia and is very far. Remember, the territory we are talking about is a very big territory.
Right.
Most people don't realize that Ukraine used to be part of the USSR.
Right.
It is just about 1990, 1991 that they were able to be free from them.
Right.
So they are even strongly integrated. And traveling from that angle to maybe Slovak or Slovenia, right, or Poland or Belarus or Croatia area or Hungary is very far. And so what most of the people would do is that they need to get a way of getting themselves down to that place. A lot of them are in the bunkers now, which makes sense for now. I believe if we stay calm, one advantage people don't realize we've always had in Eastern Europe, that black people in Eastern Europe have always been known as students. We end up as professionals. We end up as doctors. If you look at those of us who studied in the East, majority, about 70% of us end up as doctors.
Right.
At even our given vocations. And so we have some level of sympathy, and especially if you begin to rattle the language a little, people connect with you. I'm hearing certain news like people being molested and things. Please, parents, don't allow certain people to confuse you by giving you conflicting reports. It is not as bad as people are making it seem.
You feel the situation is being exaggerated by some people?
I think some has been very much exaggerated. I heard a news today about the parents who said the child was refused into a bus that has been arranged by the Church of Pentecost. I think that is not fair. I mean, the church receive everybody. But contrary to it, even if you are an atheist, or you're a Hindu, or you're a Buddhist, or a Muslim, the church would be more than happy to get you into that bus so you get converted. So for somebody to say that you wanted to answer, they ask you if you're not charismatic, if you're not a Pentecostal, don't answer. That is not good. Some of these things, a lot of people want to hear their own voice, and they send very wrong signal. So I've also had issues like Ghana has been a very respected nation among the Balkan states. Now I'm talking about Balkan states, I'm talking about a neighboring country around Hungary. Because of that, there's some sympathy vote we always have with them. Today, as we speak now, if you hold a diplomatic passport or a service passport, you go to Hungary visa-free. That is how much of a relation they've had. Over the years, Kwame Nkrumah's advisors all came from Hungary, and the 7 years roadmap of Ghana was drawn by Hungarians. It will also interest you to know that the first ever foreign coach Black Star had was a Hungarian.
Interesting facts there.
Yes, so Hungarians really, and Ghana, we've gelled over the years. Hungary has been accepting students like me on scholarship since 1959. And so the Hungarians decided immediately the issue happened that anybody who holds a Ghanaian passport who is coming from Ukraine, whether you're a student or you work there, whatever it is, whether you're a student or you work there, or you are whatever it is, as long as you hold a Ghanaian passport, enter into any of the border towns and you'll be accepted free to enter. This is what we're having that I spoke about this morning. Now, some Ghanaian students in their unwise state are dragging their friends with them who are not Ghanaians, and they are forcing them to say, used to say if you're a Ghanaian, you go through.
So they can make their way into
the territory. It's making the genuine ones feel frustrated, because now if you come and say you're a Ghanaian and you don't have a passport, you don't have an ID card, we want to vet and find out who you are really, because of course you cannot tell a Ghanaian from a Cameroonian. You cannot tell a Ghanaian from Congo. The days where we can tell where somebody can stand, even here in Ghana now, some time ago you can tell who an Ewe was, who a Muslim was, who a fetish was.
But the difference is not.
It's not there anymore.
But Doc, what would you say to a parent who's out there so anxious and not knowing what to do in these trying times?
We have a lot of informations out there. We have honorary consuls in almost all the regions. Then we have student leaders in almost all the regions. The information out there is that call the right people. We also have embassy staffs who are waiting in some of the missions who are ready to receive it. As we speak now, most people don't realize that most countries from Africa don't have embassies in Ukraine. They only have honorary consuls in Ukraine. And we are privileged that a gentleman who manned our office in Ukraine, Dr. Abed Kiche, speaks fluent Russian and speaks fluent Ukrainian. And he studied there himself, stayed there, lectures there, he's a forensic scientist. So he's been able to get an outlet to all of us who were not even in Ukraine. I used to serve on the IFES together with, I used to serve on the student union. So that network is working. And that is why I keep saying that let us get those numbers right, speak to the student leaders, and speak to the honorary consuls, and they are the best person to advise. Otherwise, there are also scams who are taking advantage of vulnerable people in painful times like this.
Yes. And taking a lot of money from them.
You will not be surprised that as at 3 days today, Abekiche's phone was hacked. It was hacked 3 times. Then we had some people who brought a number out that they said that was Abekiche's office. So those of us who are here, like I said, even though I'm not on the ground here, we are very much in touch with the people because I'm a parent myself. And so if my children, unfortunately my children are not there, or maybe fortunately, but still there are people who are there who are directly connected to me. There are people who are there who we recommended for them to have the privilege of going to study in Hungary, in Poland, in Czech Republic, Slovak, or in Ukraine. So we want to make sure that just as we do for our children, we are doing for them too.
We need to talk about the international dimension as well. You've been monitoring all the activities that are happening in Ukraine, in Russia. So many people, international experts, taking sides to this. Many say this is the return of history. What happened in Cuba is just happening in a nice way within the USSR. What's your take, academically speaking, as an international relations person, on all of the dimensions that we've seen?
I think that as students of history and students of international relations, we should not forget Hiroshima and Nagasaki. We should not forget the First World War and the Second World War. We should also not forget the reason why the League of Nations was formed, that translated into the United Nations organizations we have today. Now, in 1910, 1914, thereabout, we had the First World War. And then somewhere around 1939 through to 1944, in the early stages of 1945, we had the Second World War. And that is where the League of Nations was formed. Now, we should not lose sight of the fact that what is happening now in Ukraine is not a new thing. This is a tension that has been hanging for almost 100 years now. There's always been tension between USSR then and America, right, where we call the Cold War, until even the Berlin Wall was broken. How we had East Berlin and West Berlin, German, East German and West Germany. Now, in 1990-91, most of the Soviet USSR countries were able to detach themselves. I can't even go into all that.
Yeah, all of the history and all that.
So Ukraine was one of the countries that 1990-91 came free from Russia. But don't forget that the Russian language and the Ukrainian language is like Fante and Akan, or Ga and Adangme, very close. That's why I keep saying that Dr. Abekiche, my friend, speak Russian very well and speak languages. Very well. Right. So you speak Akan, you understand Fante. If you speak Akan, you understand Akwapim. That is how close the language is. Then the NATO decided to lure Ukraine into its fold. Don't forget that there are a lot of countries around that area that are already members of the NATO. Hungary is, Slovenia is, Poland is, they joined it. And they are the ones that have surrounded Ukraine. NATO want to have its station in Ukraine. And once it has it, the Russians know they will not be safe. It is like your enemy's friend getting closer to you.
Right in front of you.
And we all know that this whole fight in Ukraine and Russia is about fight of supremacy and greed. Why do I say greed?
You feel this is about greed?
Yes, it's greed and supremacy. And for want of a better word, lack of diplomacy. A failed diplomacy is what has gotten us into this. Because what it is that the biggest reserve of oil and certain mineral resources are in Ukraine. And that is the reason why NATO would like to station this place there. And sometimes some of these things are hard truth, but in international relations, it does too happen. So Russia is also making sure that this thing doesn't happen so that they will take advantage. Russia has over 2 million troops, soldiers. Ukraine has just about 200. Unfortunately for Russia, maybe what they also didn't realize was that Ukraine has extra 200, I think.
Right.
And it's like a boxing arena. I keep saying that war is not good for anybody. When you get into the boxing, you can get some uppercut or lower cut.
Anything at all.
Anything can happen. We don't want to give room to a third world war.
We'll get more perspectives on this, but you were talking about UTAG and nukes a while ago. I understand that Justice Afari Jumo was one of the students there. Fortunately, he's joining us via Zoom to also share his account with us, and then we'll get the response from Reverend Dr. Lawrence Tete. So, Justice, you were also studying in Ukraine. Here you are, back safe. How does it feel to be back home?
Thank you very much for having me on your show. It's been very kind of mixed emotions being in Ghana, because even though I came to Ghana trying to run away from the conflict, I didn't know it would have escalated to this level of commotion. And leaving my friends back there, it's really terrifying and sad. So it's a whole lot of mixed emotions right now.
At least we are getting indications that 16 of them have arrived. One more will touch down later today to make it 17. There are some more out there who are even refusing to come back home. How is this coming to you, learning that some of your colleagues don't want to return home? Have you been in touch with some of them, and possibly what's accounting for that?
I've been in touch with a lot of them, but anybody stating categorically that they want to stay back in Ukraine. I don't know where that information is coming from, but I have no idea of anybody stating that they want to stay in Ukraine. So far, everyone wants to evacuate. Everyone wants to leave Ukraine at the moment as we speak. About 20 people have been able to leave, but we have like over 900, close to 1,000 students left in Ukraine, yet to evacuate. I know some of my friends have been able to cross the border, yet to arrive in Accra. So we are hoping for the best.
What's going to be the way forward for most of you who are students? Are you expecting that government will roll out some coordination programs? Some of you are medical students, others are studying in various fields as well. What's your expectation of government in the coming days in terms of your academic activities? Because it's been disrupted back in Ukraine. You don't want to sit home without continuing with your studies. What's your expectation?
Back at the meeting with the minister today, I think someone raised this question, and she was like, the priority of government right now is to evacuate people from Ukraine, like Ghanaians from Ukraine. So after that, we'll try to find out what we can do best for us students from Ukraine. But I would love if they can absorb us into the system. And I'm currently in talks with my school. If they could get my transcripts or transfer letter so that I can transfer to another country or another school, that would be very fine. But if the government can absorb us into their medical institutions here in Ghana, that would be very awesome too.
And we know that Nukes is indicating that it is in touch with your colleagues. Were you a beneficiary of that process, and what's your impression or assessment of the evacuation being carried out by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Regional Integration?
Okay, I'm a member of Nukes, and so far they've been some people towards the train station to evacuate via the borders in Poland, Hungary, and Slovakia, and Romania as well. So currently we have some students in Sumi, and the minister assured us that they're going to do everything best to evacuate students from Sumi. Right now, our tight spot is going to be Sumi because students have no way of leaving. But from my information this morning, some students were able to, the first batch of students from Sumi were able to leave via a bus towards one of the borders, which I'm not so sure about. So we are hoping that most of them will be able to leave by the end of the day or even by the end of the week.
And for you, Justice, you are a fifth-year medical student in Ukraine. How does it feel now knowing that, I mean, you were almost done, I believe. How does it feel now knowing that your hopes of completing school there would no longer be a reality, at least for now? It doesn't look likely.
Well, my hope is in God. With God, everything is possible. My hopes aren't diminished. I still have hopes in whatever that comes, but I don't have like diminished hopes in not completing. I have a lot of hopes in completing. I know the best will come out of this. This is not the end, so yeah.
Right. Would have to leave it here. Fingers crossed. Justice, Reverend, is hoping and trusting that God will come through with a miracle.
I think that's the wisest thing the young man has said. I'm so proud of him. Because in times like this, when there's need a finger of God, we need God's intervention. It's a very complicated issue.
Do you feel that's what we need now in the wake of the tension, the escalating situation? Do you feel we should be looking at the religious aspect as well?
Yes. In fact, this must be looked at holistically. I think even the religious leadership has a big role to play in this. Most of them, the Russians and the Ukrainians and things, are very Catholic-minded, and we should play everything possible to make sure. In fact, the religious leadership is needed because the political leadership are just looking for supremacy. As we speak now, you and I know China is solidly behind Russia.
At least they've abstained from the votes at the Security Council. They haven't openly
well, of course.
Support.
I mean, as much as possible, it's diplomacy that is taking place. Right. But whether we are learning to walk the talk or talk the walk, it's another thing altogether. We don't want a situation where North Korea comes strongly behind Russia. So it's a give and take, and we need to be very mindful. And America is not very far from what we are talking about now. America is strongly behind NATO. So we need to just make sure we get a holistic approach to it, to look at it. Most people are only looking at Russia attacking Ukraine because of the situation now.
That's happening now.
But nobody seems to also be looking at even the tension under which Russia itself is going through. That anything can happen at any time. We don't know who is planning what, and at what stage somebody is going to throw something there. And that is why I'm saying that we shouldn't create a situation that will spark a third world war. It is not good. But beyond that, it's going to affect our economies.
I was just about coming to that because earlier today I was eavesdropping on the conversation you were having with some people at the Accra International Conference Center. You were indicating that we may be far away from the conflict, but developing countries such as Ghana would also bear the brunt when it comes to the economy. Explain that dynamics to us so we can understand what's happening.
I say we will even bear it more. When two elephants fight, the grass and the ground suffers. Now, this is what it is. Because of the oil reserve we have in that part of the world, Russia, Ukraine especially, it eases a lot of things. If that one is not going on, things will hike up and it will increase the economies. And the moment fuel goes up, economies suffer a lot. And so we might be very far from them, but we'll have a very strong effect. How much reserves do we have? As we speak today, let me just give you a simple statistics. Can you imagine how much of money it will take Ghana to evacuate our students? Assuming we are evacuating 2,000 students alone, and one is going to cost about $5,000, how much are we talking about? Loads of money. The logistics, they are eating every day, they are eating 3 times a day, they are getting accommodation. Nothing is free for them. And so, apart from benevolent organizations and philanthropies that are helping, state is coping up all these things. A lot of unfortunate situations will happen that will affect our economy. And so we need to pray. We need to pray that this doesn't continue, because the longer it takes, the more it affects everything. And you'll be surprised. The ripple effect that it will be having on some of our economies will not be good at all. It will be very challenging. And we need to look at the dynamics of even the economics.
Right. Reverend, I didn't intend going there, but obviously since you're talking about the economy, we need to put Ghana into perspective. Where we find ourselves today as a country, it appears that we're finding ourselves in a very hard time. Government says it needs funding from so many sources to deal with a lot of issues. The e-levy is on the table. It's become a deadlock. The religious leaders have called on opposition political parties to see eye to eye with the government and break this deadlock so we can get some funding for government business. What's your take on the e-levy?
I think that just as I spoke about Russia and Ukraine, we need a lot of diplomacy in our approach. We've all taken an entrenched position, and the truth is that it's unfortunate, but I have to say it as it is. Ghana and Ghanaian leaders are thinking of their political leadership much more than the nation. Because I think that by now, there should have been a point of convergence. I believe behind the scene talks, with the deputy and the minority leader,
right.
majority leader, and reps from all the two houses can sit down and see a point of convergence. Otherwise, what we are doing now is that if you look at all the debate, it's either the debate is for NDC or the debate is for MPP. Unfortunately for us, our parliament at this time in our life, the history of Ghana, is being put to test. This is the time our democracy is being tested, where we virtually have a hung parliament. And so I think our leaders must go back to a drawing board again. We should make sure we think of Ghana first before we think of our political party. Because if you look at all the statements that are coming from all the two leading parties, NDC and MPP, it is the entrenched part of it that they are not coming holistically to think about Ghana.
And just yesterday, the president was speaking about this. He paints the picture that revenue is necessary to move government forward. But any attempt now by the majority side to push it through will result into what we've seen later last year, where there was a brawl in Parliament, the Chamber of Parliament. How did you feel watching these moments and the fear now that may recur?
To say the least, that was one of the saddest moments I ever had. I studied in Budapest University of Economic Sciences. I came to London School of Economics to study. Now, we take pride that Ghana is safe haven and that Ghanaians will only make noise, but we still have transition when we finish our terms. And for once, we're fighting. We fought to begin this era, this very era in Parliament, and we fought to finish it. And the signal we are sending now is that we are undermining the hard-won reputation of those who have been there before. I believe we should go back to a drawing board again and realize that we took our parliamentarians there to represent us as a nation, not to represent their political parties. Because most of the fights we had was people were defending NDC and people were defending MPP, but they were certainly not defending Ghana. And so, please, let's get back again, realize that we have only one Ghana. And I feel very sad, I feel very choked as I say what I'm saying now, that if we don't handle it well, we'll destroy the reputation of handling. I mean, if I hear people speak about Parliament, the manner in which they've spoken about Parliament the past few months, I feel very sad.
Are you scared for Ghana's democracy?
I'm not scared. I think that we're going through this process and eventually things will die down. We all wake up. You know, sometimes we take a strange situation because we don't understand. When we really get informed about certain things, we'll handle it differently. This E-level issue is a Hungarian way of taxing. Hungary.
Oh, really?
Yes.
What's the background to that?
I think that and I don't even want to go into that now, for the purpose of that, I don't want to go into that. But what I'm saying is that we must realize what is good for our nation at a particular time. I have a saying that economics is a borrowed language. What is good for America might not necessarily be good for England. What is good for England might not necessarily be good for Ghana. But if we come together as a people, then we can get a point of convergence.
The time within which we find ourselves now, do we need the E-levy?
It's not about whether we need it or we don't need it. Why do we have Parliament? The reason why we have Parliament is to debate issues like this. In fact, you and I will not be fair. You are a journalist. I'm an economist and a preacher. That is not my responsibility. The responsibility of Parliament, the reason why they have certain committees in Parliament is because there are expertise who come together to discuss it. That is what a debate is all about. And if we debate with decorum, with respect, with dignity, with respect for our constitution, we can have a solution to this thing. I don't think it's out of place at all. I think it's about time. But truly speaking, a lot of parliamentarians now will be sitting back and will be embarrassed about why they fought and for what
reason.
For what? And your children will be watching you fighting. And you can imagine embarrassment. You sit back there, and I keep saying that emotions have no intellect. We should let this debate be done devoid of emotions. Because if we do it on the basis of emotions, we can't do it right. Let's think of Ghana first. Otherwise, I'll sit here and I'll give my entrenched position, and you give your entrenched position. You know what happens to us? Anybody on TV now watching me who knows I said, let's have e-levy, so this MPP. Let's not have e-levy, it's NDC.
So the political tagging.
The political tagging is happening. Whereas we can sit down and debate, and you'll be surprised. I believe in the next few weeks, there'll be a point of convergence. I believe it.
And that's one man who understands the economy of matters, international relations, and also has the gospel to back it all up. Reverend Dr. Lawrence Tete joining us for a conversation here on The Pulse. When we return, 4 teacher unions in Ghana have boycotted the ongoing National Labour Conference. We'll talk all about that here on The Pulse. Stay with me. And you're welcome back to The Pulse. Now, 4 teacher unions in Ghana have boycotted the ongoing National Labour Conference spearheaded by government in the Eastern region. Now, according to the unions, the conference does not seek to address the basic concerns of Ghanaian workers. Now, we know that addressing the media in a press conference, the president of the National Association of Graduate Teachers, NAGRAT, Angel Kabonu, lamented the worsening economic conditions in the country and said government should have rather created a platform for better conditions of service, not to organize a conference. Listen.
We indicated on our various platforms, labor platforms, that we are not going to attend the program because the reactions that were coming from the grassroots were not reactions for labor conference, were reactions for us to go and negotiate salaries and to change the current, the status quo. Members were given examples of fuel prices going up. They were given example of the depreciation in the cedi, appreciation of the dollar. They were given example of the dire economic situation. So they didn't feel that labor conference was going to address those needs. So we indicated to our colleagues earlier that we were not going to participate in the labor conference, especially when we saw that there was going to be an MOU signed. And the MOU will be binding you to obey the tenets of the MOU. We don't think that is the best.
So, for clarity's sake, you have boycotted.
Yes.
You were not there at the opening ceremony.
No.
And you are not going to participate in any form.
No.
So some are also raising concerns that this perhaps a platform that you could have used to accentuate some of these challenges.
The nature of the platform was not to negotiate incomes. The nature of the platform is not to negotiate emoluments. The platform was supposed to go and review the economic situation in Ghana and see how labor was going to contribute in uplifting the economy. That is a total, I see that more or less like an academic work than work to increase the emolument of workers.
Would you consider?
Well, I wouldn't use the expression waste of time, but I will say that it does not reflect the expectation of the worker today. I don't even see how decisions at a labor conference can bind anybody. Yes, I think it will be a storehouse of information for government to improve upon its administration.
So now,
our conditions of service have not improved because every day we are dwindling in the real value of our incomes. Most prices in this country are calculated or indexed in the dollar. As you and I speak, the cedi dollar exchange is around 7.5. Last year, around this time, it was around 5.8. So there is about a 27% reduction in the value of our currency. If you have taken a mortgage, then it tells you where you are. Just on Saturday, the prices of transportation fares were increased by 15%. And those who drive their private cars, the price of fuel is almost 8 cedis. So it tells you that whatever you had a year ago is falling
Now, headmaster of Tamale Senior High School, Reverend Edward Dazika, says his school is yet to receive some of the anticipated food supplies for the current academic year. He says the government was supposed to provide food for the entire academic year, but just a portion of that has been provided so far. He spoke after businessman Ibrahim Mahama, who also happens to be a former student, made a donation in response to the situation. Northern Regional Correspondent Martina Bugre has more.
Has disbursed food for just 2 months out of the 4 months for Tamasco. This creates a deficit of 2 months yet to be added. But speaking to the media at the donation, Reverend Edward Azika said the school had challenges with food last academic year, adding that there are times they had just to feed the students with what is available.
Last academic year, there have been food challenges. You can ask the students. There are times we just have to feed them what is available. We have had challenges with the supplies. The supplies come in a very erratic manner, but this will give us a lot of stability. The academic year has begun. Not all the food that we need has come. But as this one has come, it will give us some stability. We expect rice, we expect maize, we expect, and all they have given us only portions to be able to take care of the students whilst they mobilize themselves to come. They were supposed to give us what will last for the semester, which is about 4 months. But for now, they have given us that which will take us just for 2 months. So they are still trickling in. And so this one gives us relative stability.
Mr. Azika also commended Mr. Ibrahim Mahama for supporting the school with a 550-bed capacity boys dormitory. He said it will go a long way in addressing some of the challenges of accommodation for boys in the school.
We are just standing by Hayfront House. Hayfront House, from here you can see some cracks on it. The building, as at now, we are not using the top floor because of the cracks that have developed. If you go to another house, Tamaklo House, some cracks have developed, so that one again, we are not using the top floor. If you put the two houses together, we have up to about 400. So if the house is just 500, that should tell you that when it's finished, already engineers have told us that those buildings, the structural integrity can no more be guaranteed. That's why we evacuated the tops. So when this one comes on stream, we can move those two houses.
Representative of the businessman Rafiq Mahama said Mr. Ibrahim's inspiration is to see the students live and learn in a serene environment. He said the boys' dormitory he's building is about 75% complete.
There are a lot of projects that we do, not only in Tamale, but other part of the country, especially our operational areas as well. We've done some of these projects there, but his inspiration is that he's a former student of this school, and he really wants to see, the students we have here, actually life should be a bit better for them to study hard and other stuff. So that's why we decided to put this 550-bed dormitory for them. It's almost 75-80% complete, but he decided to take care of the food when it comes to food and other, for the student for the whole semester. And we calculated the number of bags and everything that will cater for the whole student population on campus. And that's why we brought the food from Accra, which is 1,000 bags of rice.
President Akufo-Addo has justified the need for Parliament to pass the controversial electronic transactions bill, describing it as an innovative fiscal measure to expand the country's tax base. According to him, the country cannot continue to rely on foreign aid and grants in the wake of the growing debt burden. This will be the second time the president has spoken about the controversial levy, delivering the keynote address at the National Labour Conference at Nkwetia in the Eastern region. The president noted that to wean the country off aid, there is a need to expand the tax base to include the working class.
We have to make concerted efforts as partners to hasten our recovery from COVID-19 by finding intelligent ways of bringing everyone on board to contribute their quota, no matter how small. Government, on its part, is implementing a policy of cutting the budgets of ministries, departments, and agencies by 20% this year as its contribution to measures to ensure fiscal consolidation. Ghana's tax to GDP ratio of 12.2% compares unfavorably with our peers the world over. The average tax to GDP ratio in West Africa stands at 18%, and indeed, the recommended ratio for ECOWAS member states is a minimum of 20%. The average for OECD countries is 34%. There is an urgent need to enhance significantly our capacity for domestic revenue mobilization to realize our development potential, create opportunities for our vibrant and dynamic youth, and deliver improved livelihoods for our fellow citizens. We cannot continue to allow less than 10%, specifically 7.8%, i.e. 2.4 million people of the population, carry the direct tax burden of 30.8 million people. We must provide an opportunity for every Ghanaian to contribute towards nation building. The proposed e-levy is one such innovative fiscal measure which will help improve our tax to GDP ratio on an equitable basis.
On its part, the Ghana Employers Association is of the view that the deepening lack of trust is partly responsible for the labor agitations in the country. Secretary General of the Trades Union Congress, Dr. Anthony Yalban, lamented the poor working conditions of Ghanaians attributable to the prevailing economic conditions. We can now of course, take you to some other stories, because on the subject of the controversial e-levy, the Dean of the University of Ghana's Law Faculty, Professor Raymond Atukuba, is running Ghanaians to accept the controversial e-levy, no matter how distasteful it may be. His warning comes as the government admits there will soon be a difficulty in paying salaries of public workers if something urgent is not done to address the worsening economic situation in the country. Now, he's, however, asking government to be reasonable with the proposal. He spoke last night at a public lecture on a review of the 1992 Constitution and its impact on the economy of Ghana, and starts by laying the grounds for his suggestions.
Collapse of the economy and a return to the stranglehold of the IFIs, we have no choice but to pass it. As someone has noted, President Nana Addo Dankwa Akufo-Addo will go down in history as, quote, the president of public debt, or, quote, the president of austerity, or maybe both. E-levy is the part of the presidency of austerity. The starting point for successfully passing the e-levy bill is for government to stop lying to us, the citizenry. Come clean. Confess that you had thought the job of managing the economy was simple, but that you now know better. Abate the arrogance and high-handedness. Ask the people of Ghana for forgiveness. And pray the people of Ghana that we have limited options right now. We either allow the economy to collapse and we all suffer and get back into the grips of the neo-colonial IFIs, or we use the e-levy to prevent economic recession and depression. Ghanaians are smart and empathetic.
Now, Attorney General Godfred Yeboadami insists that all cases that have been filed by this government are based on thorough investigations. He describes the NDC's claims and petition to the Commonwealth as hypocritical on the Ato Forson case. Now, he argues that the evidence is clear that the said ambulance transaction was contrary to law. Claims by the NDC that the institutions of state have become weak, hence its resort to the external bodies has no basis. The claims that the courts are being used to silence opponents amounts to attempts to undermine efficient administration of justice. He concluded that the Commonwealth petition is unnecessary distraction.
That's a very hypocritical and misleading statement. Very hypocritical and misleading, because clearly, for me, it's an attempt to run away from justice. All the government has sought to do is to ensure that the NDC and the acts of its officers are brought to book. And indeed, I will not be deterred at all in my quest to ensure that there's accountability for the people of Ghana. The cases that we have investigated and the actions that we have filed in court are all on account of solid evidence that we have unearthed through painstaking investigations. It not just come to court on the spur of the moment or without any basis at all. It is as a result of thorough and painstaking investigations conducted by the government. Some of the cases, investigations have actually gone on for about 5 or 6 years. And indeed, we are seeing the results of the actions. And therefore, I find it very hypocritical and misleading for the NDC Original Secretary to make such an allegation. And I'm not surprised. This is actually not the first time that the NDC or a person associated with the NDC has sought to find refuge in the international forum, especially when the person is being brought to book or accountability is being sought for the actions of that person. I can cite the instance of Afreboyomi. You were in this court, you followed proceedings in the court, you saw how Afreboyomi sought refuge in the African Court of Human Rights, alleging bias on the part of the Supreme Court of Ghana. The African Court of Human Rights stated in no uncertain terms that his action was without any basis at all, and that the Supreme Court of Ghana was right in enforcing the laws of Ghana. Boyomi actually pursued the matter on a review. The review panel of the African Court of Human Rights unanimously dismissed his review application. So I'm not surprised at all. I mean, I think that all these recourse to foreign tribunals and all are a ruse. They are a ruse to avoid the MPP and the NDC from facing justice. And I am saying that no amount of distraction will deter me from ensuring that justice is sought for the people of Ghana.
So let's check out what's happening now in Parliament. Our man Parker Wilson is there for us, monitoring all the latest on this subject of the e-levy. Let's find out from Parker what the latest is. So Parker, you're in Parliament. I'm sure that a lot has been said about this e-levy and the final attempts by government to push this through. What more engagements are happening, and what's the e-levy looking like in terms of its fate?
Let me start with the Speaker of Parliament this morning, because the members of the Council of State played a catchy call on him. They are not enthused about the recent developments in the House, especially the fisticuffs that we observed somewhere last day over the rejection of the approval of the e-levy. So they have agreed to begin what they call a series of engagements with the minority leadership and the majority leadership, and also the Speaker of Parliament. What you need to know is that the members of the Council of State have already engaged the minority caucus and the majority caucus. In fact, we are learning that both of them actually pour their heart out. They raised all the concerns that seems to be the central of the major challenges we are having in Parliament. So from there, they have moved on to the Speaker as well. And the Speaker has clearly indicated to them that he also has a lot of challenges. In fact, according to him, he was expecting some resistance, some challenges in this 8th Parliament because of how he was elected as a Speaker of Parliament. But the magnitude of it is quite surprising, and he's not happy with the situation where his Deputy Speaker continuously overturned his ruling. And so these are some of the things he has put before the members of the Council of State for them to address. Now, according to the chairman of the Council of State, the motive essentially is to ensure proper parliamentary democracy, so that the two caucuses, the majority and the minority leadership, will weld their differences and work to the betterment of this nation. So that has been the one major concern of this.
Okay.
And in the chamber, there was conversation about how we can work together to reduce road accidents.
Right, and even before, just before we talk about road accidents, I guess the reason for which we've seen the Council of State engage the Speaker is ostensibly over the issues of the e-levy. Did they raise their position on the matter and what it is they feel should be done in the wake of the deadlock?
Well, so the opening conversation was allowed to the media, but the details of that meeting was closed door. However, there was no conversation about e-levy when we were there, but sources within the meeting has indicated to me, or have indicated to me, that it is one of the key things that has generated some of the controversies in Parliament. And so the Council of State will look at all those things to ensure how the voting processes will be done going forward. So that has been the conversation going on between the Council of State members, the Council of State, and also the Speaker of Parliament, Alban Sumana Kingsford Babbitt. And I also made the point to you about the conversation on reduction of road accidents in the country. Members of Parliament are not too happy about the rate at which vehicles are involved in accidents. And so the Transport Minister was on before the House today to answer some questions on that. For him, the approach by the government is to ensure education is given to the driver. So they, together with the National Road Safety Commission, will now begin a massive campaign on road carnage. And again, the concerns about markets gradually springing along the roadside also was a major concern. In fact, the Greater Accra Regional Minister, Henry Porte, had to share his own experience how he managed to get market women off the street here in Accra, and the resistance he faced. He had to challenge his colleagues who are in the other regions to equally do same. When some of these things are done, they will be able to reduce or mitigate the issue of road accidents in the country. And in the course of his answering the questions in Parliament, he disclosed that government is working around the clock to acquire a national airline. And this actually came up when one of the MPs raised concerns about the scarcity of national airlines, especially when you're traveling domestically. So if you're going to Kumasi, if you're going to Tamale, sometimes you have to wait long hours because the flight which went to probably Tamale is yet to return on all of those things. So he disclosed to Parliament that soon he will present a bill to the House for the acquisition of a national airline which will operate domestically. So this has been some of the conversation going on. And bless there is one thing that in Parliament, it appears almost every week, we discuss something that has to do with the Member of Parliament for Dom Kwabena, Sarah Josafo. The ranking member on the Foreign Affairs Committee, someone of Vista Blacka, has been raising concerns about some chartered flights, which was actually given to Josafo to come to Ghana and partake in the voting of the e-levy. He's asking the special prosecutor to launch an investigation into that the money that was spent on the private jet. And he says he's not going to back down until every penny that was used for the chartered flight is retrieved.
Parker Wilson there, joining us live from Parliament. This week, beginning our Ghana month, there's a series of stories themed around lesser known stories. As we do know, of course, in Ghana, we're talking about Ghanaian languages, the Hanta language, spoken in the Western region, is actually one of the languages identified as one at risk of extinction, as many are unable to write or speak it through songs. A group is actually trying to keep the languages in the minds and on the lips of people, especially those within the area. In the first of our series of stories celebrating Ghana Month, JoyNews' Justice Bedu traveled to Takoradi to meet the people behind the choir.
This choir is trying to keep a language that is on the brink of death alive. The Apua Youth Choir, founded by young men and women in this community just on the outskirts of Takoradi. This song they are rehearsing in the Ahanta language means God is the only one we know and He is all we have.
Growing up in the locality, seeing my people or the grown-ups speaking Ahanta, it was great. Our children are speaking English more now than it was yesterday.
My name is Felix Kofiele. I am the Executive Director of the Apua Youth Choir.
Felix and his friends write new songs themselves and also translate songs from other languages into Ahanta for the choristers to learn.
Because people don't really know that Takoradi is Ahanta, we intend not to use the deepest version of Ahanta, but use what we normally call the Ahanta Fante. So that is the first trick, to try to use the Ahanta Fante language to try to form something which people in Takoradi or its environs can easily relate to. That will gradually bring the interest.
We were not taught Ahanta when we were kids. So, especially when you get the language, you want to turn them up into the language itself. It's quite difficult.
Portia Amwa is originally not Ahanta, but has lived in this community for 29 years. She was part of the people who started this choir, and through rehearsals like this, now speaks and understands the language.
Though we are in Ahanta, but we don't learn the Ahanta. We learn Fancy. So I don't know even the alphabet of the... I didn't know then. But when I came to AYC, they've been teaching us because of the song.
It's a Sunday, and like every other Sunday, Apua Youth Choir performs at one church or the other, serenading worshippers in the language of their birth. The Ahanta language, pronounced originally as Ayenda, is spoken by the Ahanta people who occupy the land in between the Proa and the Ankobra rivers, including Sekendi Takoradi, the Western Regional Capital. They are bordered by the Nzima, Wasa, and Fanti people to the west, north, and east, respectively.
We can't preach nor become a minister, but through the music that we sing, we can sell our language far. You can love a song, not necessarily understanding the words in them, but the rhythm and the composition itself will make you love to sing that song. I remember songs like Me Dark Way Nama. We do sing those songs in church, but we don't understand. So if we are able to sing with Ahanta, we can penetrate the world with the language, and people will love it. Especially our own people will love that. Hey, people are speaking or singing in my own language. Then I don't have to hide.
Like many of Ghana's lesser-known languages, Ahanta is not taught in schools. The young men and women behind the choir hope that their little efforts here would help change that. Justice Baidu, JoyNews, Abua, in the Western region.
Obviously, I'd want to try one of those hymns. That's all time will allow us for today on The Pulse here on the Joy News channel. Don't forget to log on to myjoyonline.com. Also follow us on all of our social media handles. It's Joy News on TV. My personal handle is at Lester Sugan. And what you have on your screens just a couple of minutes ago and now is myjoyonline.com. Make sure you're there for all of the latest of the updates on our stories. Next is Let's Talk Showbiz. We'll see you same time tomorrow.